She'll give us the sign when we're ready.
Hi, Charlie.
Oh, you did.
You're good, Judy.
About as close as it could be.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order for the Planning Commission, May 17th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes from the April 12th meeting?
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ongoing business, the subdivision ordinance proposal. Anything that's of great importance, Jim, that we should talk about?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and ask Neva
Okay,
to go ahead and present.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So the proposal for the subdivision ordinance comes from a place of, after kind of my year one here and working with our subdivision ordinance, I noted a few things that were kind of, had room for improvement. So some of this is just terminology, and we can just go through it item by item. So at the beginning, it's striking the word hardship and adding practical difficulty. For you on the Board of Adjustment, you'd recognize that that's just an updated term for the legal standard that we're using for those. And then the word public didn't have the letter L in it. It's just a spelling error. The next one, item 4.1E. This is my attempt to make the process easier for people with clunky wording. So I'm open to other wording options, but nobody's given me a better option yet. So the general idea right now for our administrative subdivision, it's only eligible if properties haven't been subdivided within the last 2 years. So if you have a property, just picture a regular 40-acre parcel, and ultimately you want to create four parcels out of that, well, you don't know who the buyers are going to be for all those parcels, and maybe they want different configurations. So instead of just splitting it north half, south half right off the bat, you need to do the full split. Otherwise, if you just do a north half and a south half, those will be locked up for 2 years before you can then split them again. So it's, again, kind of hard to explain very well. I'm sorry, I know it's a little ambiguous. But the idea is that that single 40 can't be subdivided into more than 4 parcels within 2 years. So I would look back and see, has this parcel been subdivided within the last 2 years? If it has it been created into more than 4 parcels? So those are kind of the two things, is more than 4 parcels within 2 years. That's overall, and it can be between 2 different subdivision processes if possible. This does actually hold up people's projects because they don't really know what the buyers for their properties are going to be if they have different configurations that they might want to do. And to do it all in one go, it's kind of a difficult process for people. So, yeah.
And I will throw in there too, Madam Chair and Board, that really what we were trying to do earlier on is strike that balance between allowing an administrative process for subdivision and not going into the plat. By state statute, if you have 5 or more lots and blah, 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 you have to run into a plat. And so we wanted to make sure that we had this process for administrative subdividing and not have it served. And we found that when we first instituted it, that people were utilizing that to subvert the platting process, that they were platting and platting and platting, or not platting, but admin sub, when they should have actually been platting the process. So that's why we kind of came up with that no more than 4 in the 2-year limit. But then we've experienced some of the ramifications that Neva was talking about with having that 2-year period.
Yeah, so that should, again, all these changes should be making the process easier for people. The next item, 4.4, is just adding more clear language. Completed survey really doesn't mean anything. Certified land survey does. And then practical difficulty. Item F there, I'd like to change the timeline for recording. So after people do an administrative subdivision and I've approved that administrative subdivision, there's a certain time frame that approval is valid, that they have to move forward and have the new legal descriptions recorded with the Cook County Recorder's Office. That has been 6 months in the past, but we'd like to extend that up to 12 months, again, to make that easier for people. Sometimes after my approval, it takes a little bit for those legal descriptions to really get verified. So again, that'll make it easier for people. And then also, I'd like to extend that time frame administratively for Torrance property, because that's a more rigorous process on the backside. So I think that's all for the subdivision ordinance, and then I've got more in the zoning ordinance. Is there any questions first off with that set of information? Cool. Okay, so then for the proposed zoning ordinance amendment, we have this proposal as topical. That's why it's subdivision and zoning ordinance. So your first question might be, why is this boundary line adjustment proposal in this zoning ordinance? Because the scope of the subdivision ordinance is about when you're creating new parcels. So I didn't feel that this really belonged under that scope of the subdivision ordinance. So we're proposing it under the general provisions of the zoning ordinance. And this is intended for when I have a little piece of my property and my neighbor wants that, and I just want to sell that piece to my neighbor. This isn't really meant to circumvent the administrative subdivision ordinance. So I kind of used some guidelines from Carleton County as a main indicator for crafting some of this language. That came highly preferred from some lawyers in the area. And I've been kind of using this layout over the last, I would say, 6 to 9 months with people coming to me with boundary line adjustments, and it seems to be working really well. So, yeah.
Question. If there's been an administrative subdivision done on a property and they need to adjust the boundary, that would not count as they wouldn't have to wait 2 years to
Right.
adjust the boundary?
Yeah,
Okay.
my interpretation, I think some of this comes down to the zoning administrator's interpretation. New parcel created, by some people, it might just be changing the property lines. That's not how I'm viewing it. I'm viewing it as a new actual parcel number is being created.
Mhm.
It gives a little bit more flexibility to the landowners. So this will be a more simple process than a full-on administrative subdivision. We're mostly looking for conformity. So will adjusting those boundary lines between neighbors lead to non-conforming parcels, non-conforming structures? Will there be legal access issues by transferring some land that's in an existing easement? Those are the kinds of things that I want to double check with people and bring to their attention, because quite often property owners, they don't work with this all the time. So they're like, oh, I didn't really think about that. So be a relatively simple form, and then if this is approved, I will approach the county board about adding a fee and an application form to correspond with this.
Anybody have questions? Okay, let's,
This has been legally noticed several times due to the planning commission meetings getting rescheduled over this winter and springtime, and I have not received any feedback other than the positive responses that it's going to help.
all right. Is there a motion to approve the changes in the subdivision zoning ordinance proposal?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tower ordinance 47.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a couple of members from our IS department here. Rowan Watkins and Jay DeCou. This is an ordinance that we in the zoning office work with the IT department with, because they manage the tower districts. But we enforce the ordinance language of it, so it's a partnership. So the tower ordinance went into effect 2015?
Well, originally, that was back in 2001. They
Oh.
were separated out from the wind energy towers and cell towers were together. We separated them out at that time.
Okay. So when Jay and I sat down, we noticed that some of this language was a little fuzzy and ambiguous for somebody who's maybe down in Florida who never even comes up here, and they're doing all of this off-site. So it helped to maybe make this language a little bit more clear for everybody. So, you know, the first item, 3.10, designated locations. Well, what is a location? So we're going by actual parcels to define where the tower district is located, and we're defining those by parcels. So that way somebody who is maybe a mile away, they can say, well, I'm in the general location. So we want to be specific about what is intended with these tower districts. Again, the word prioritized helps us think about things in a list versus just a preference. For the next item, also the ordinance identified a tower facilities request policy that wasn't actually maybe written anywhere very specifically, so, or at least it wasn't attached to this.
It wasn't attached.
Wasn't attached, thank
So,
you.
In order to simplify and streamline the process, we just put it in the policy, or put it in the ordinance.
Yeah, and now it's clear for everybody. So they can find it online and it's right there. Jay, do you wanna take the floor from me?
You're doing great, but I
know,
can explain as much if there's any questions anyone has on the commission here. In regards to the tower ordinance or any of the proposed amendments, the really, if I was to break it down into a nutshell, the reason that we went through this was twofold. One was we actually have enough time now since the tower ordinance was enacted that we know how it's been used and how it is intended to be used. And so the language changes that we've suggested here are mainly to better reflect how the tower ordinance has been used or is intended to be used within the county. Thus, the locations and preferences, we want to make sure that it's well understood exactly what the purpose of the ordinance is. The second fold of that would be when you get down towards the end of the ordinance, the updating of the map. So the map, the previous map had 4 different zones that were proposed. Those have now been completed, as well as a couple that we chose to add because of the location of the Department of Transportation's towers and or county towers on those sites. So again, to summarize the ordinance's purpose, it's so that we don't have disparate towers located all over the county, so that we can have tower districts that concentrate that particular use to minimize the viewshed impact, and also to make sure we have an effective system that hits all edges of the county. We don't have a lot of people up here, so there's not a lot of commercial interest in expanding coverages, so the county is doing a really good job of covering the space that needs to be covered by statute with ordinance like this.
If I could, I would just add that one of the core principles of the tower ordinance is to drive co-location. And previously, the way that had been done was just on individual towers. If there's an existing tower, you have to co-locate on it first. The creation of tower districts was to add another level of co-location into a geographical area or on a piece of property, so that if there's a tower next to one and somebody can't co-locate on that, the point of the tower district is then so that if another tower needs to be built, it's next to that one and not on another hillside and in a place where the utilities, the power and fiber and access has already been laid out. And just again, like Jay said, trying to minimize the impact to the viewshed. So if it's already on one hill, you keep them there together and not put it on another. And part of the drive for this and adding that is that there were other towers built, and we wanted to include them into the tower district so that we can drive co-location to those new towers.
You expand upon the meaning of the end of Appendix B, Tower Facilities Request Policy Purpose, last sentence. County discourages redundant services. I'm a long-term IT guy, just retired from Accenture, and that's redundancy and lack thereof it screams at me.
Sure.
I think we might be talking about different types of redundancies as far as service levels versus different carriers and or overlapping services. But
In this case, I think when it was written, the intent there was something like FM broadcast radio and the service that they provide with public safety and partnership. WTIP provides that service, and they qualify for certain benefits laid out in the ordinance that we provide to them, and that's not something that we would foresee another radio station coming on and getting the same benefits for.
Where are you at, Brad?
Bottom of page 4.
16, right here.
Okay.
Again, the difference between the electronics and
Yeah.
the hard copies. So then when that, you know, because we recently had the fiber outage, right? We
Yep.
lost 911 service and everything.
Yep.
And so WTIP was the backup, turn on the radio, we start getting the announcements and so forth.
Mhm.
And what role does the county have in looking into their redundancy, failover, backup recovery, all of the other things that traditionally go along with their kicking on of the generator testing, battery backups, all the other things that go along with it?
In WTIPs,
Correct.
none.
That's up to them.
We partner with them, and at our facilities, I mean, the studio is that's their facility, and we have no role there. Here specifically at tower sites, we have locations where we share generators. We have other locations where they have their own generator, but we share propane tanks. It really depends, and because WTIP is kind of unique and a good local partner, we have a lot of shared resources that we offer up to them, have offered up to them. So whether it's here in Grand Marais, or their station at Gunflint, or their station out in Grand Portage, those are the towers they're co-located on, and each configuration is a little bit different. But we don't control the backhaul, and they're sort of on their own for buying infrastructure and redundancy of their equipment.
And I can say, due to their funding structure with the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, they are required to have redundancies in place both for power and for transmission. So, for example, the main studio here in town going up to the main transmitter, they have 3 different paths of communication that they can utilize. So if the telephone line goes down, boop, they can go over to the broadband. If the broadband goes down, boop, they can go over to the microwave link. And they've got 2 different microwave links, a 5.8 and a 900. So they can get their signal up there, no problem. And the other stations, WKEK and WGPO, Gunflint and Grand Portage respectively, they both run as an independent station due to their broadcast size, but are basically slaved off of the transmitter up here. So this transmitter is going to be real hard to knock down. You're going to have to knock the station down to knock that transmitter down, and thus the signal in the rest of the county is pretty well protected from the rest of that risk of going down, specifically for WTIP. Now, any other commercial radio station, that's their own deal. You know, they have to manage their own resources like that. I know that both Minnesota Public Radio and WTIP are held to different standards because of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the backbone of the emergency alert system, which is what they serve as.
Okay.
So.
You know, for the purposes of the ordinance, I think I've kind of exhausted the subject because I can geek out on this for a while, but the definitely something I would ask that the county, from a commissioner's perspective, understand the reliance we're placing on a third party who you have no supervisory position over, and that I understand their confidence, but, you know, Microsoft would have told me the same thing about their cloud data center when it went down, right? Lightning strike and boom. And, you know, and like numerous others that I've been through in the past. So it is a sense of saying, when we lost 911 and the ability to communicate in the county and the things and the excesses we had to go to, the inability of Arrowhead to fail over the fiber optic in a reasonable amount of time should have been pre-tested, should have been known what to do. It seemed people were scrambling. That we need to understand, because we have to face it, people's reliance on cell phones and their dropping of landlines is a move that most everyone has made. And some of the power goes out, but our phone still works. It's not as true as it used to be.
Clearly a topic for
Just-
emergency management.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say, Madam Chair, if I could, that this is a land use.
Yep, I
ordinance.
was-
Our jurisdiction only is very narrowly defined with regards to the administration of the towers.
That's kind of what I was
Very
doing, was
valid
stopping and
points, but
dropping
yeah.
off that to go to a different.
The issues are interconnected.
Yeah.
But our jurisdiction only goes so far.
Yeah.
The only question I have is, there's 8 sites identified as tower locations, tower districts. Does that cover the entire county? Like the northwest corner of Cook County? SAG, boundary waters?
Talking up here.
So, I would say the short answer is no, but there's some practical reasons why that is. Grand Portage is a good case, good example. It's a huge area up
Right.
there, and we just don't have the jurisdiction or authority to put a type of jurisdiction like that there to make a tower district. And so there are sites there, and we, in our office, have a role in encouraging co-locations. But we, in that area, will need to work with our partners in Grand Portage to facilitate that. And so it's excluded from the map, and there's no Cook County tower districts there. We have other ones that are on state property that, same. the
So
Hoagland
there's
site
other
is-
tower districts that aren't on
There are
this
other
map.
towers that we encourage co-location on, but there are not tower districts as governed by the Cook County
Okay,
Land Services.
And
Alright.
the reason we went back and forth about that, Neva and I as well, when we were bringing this before the commission, because it, for me, I would love to have things be tied up with a nice little bow and be like, this is all of them. Boom, here you go. But as Rowan was saying, we simply do not have the jurisdiction to extend that kind of usage limitation to land that we don't have that jurisdiction over, thus, tribal, state, federal lands. And also, if anybody wants to build anything on those lands, the things that the hoops they're gonna have to jump through are gonna be way more rigorous than what we put forward in our ordinance.
okay.
So it does give a certain level of protection, and with the language in the ordinance pushing towards co-location anyway, it really makes it apparent that there's an easier path to go, which would be to put your stuff on a tower that already exists, rather than to go through the process of getting permission and creating another tower.
Okay.
So,
Anyone else have questions? Comments? I need a motion to either approve or,
Motion to approve as written.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
thank you,
Need a
Madam Chair.
motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Good job. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So we're on to the Board of Adjustment.
What? Yeah. Hey,
Okay.
I was gonna ask you, but you probably should ask those guys. These,
Because we have another meeting.
these are proposed, right?
Okay, we'll call the Board of Adjustment to order
There's a bogus one already?
Yeah.
for the May 17th meeting.
Answered my question.
And we'll approve the agenda and the minutes for the April 12th meeting.
If I may, Madam Chair, it came to my attention that one of the conditions that I had written down for one of the variance hearings last month was incorrectly written, so I wanted to run that by you. This was for the MJ Properties LLC Government Lodge Resort properties. It was about that planting buffer. So I went back and re-listened to the minutes, and verbatim, per Mr. Laboda's condition, it was kind of phrased a couple of times, but the final one that you guys chose on said, a 10-foot vegetative buffer with plantings must be established between CSAH 20 ditch and any component of construction, including driveway. That's what you said, and I had incorrectly interpreted that in my notes. That's in the minutes. So I would
So
recommend we amend the minutes to reflect that condition appropriately.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes and agenda with that change?
I would motion with that amendment to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business, Robert and Rochelle Birch. You're on.
Thanks, Madam Chair. It seems silly to call this new business because it will feel repetitive. Mr. and Mrs. Bush were here last month, and you guys can come forward if you want. After they had their variance approval last month, they shortly came in a day or two after and realized that their whole variance application had the incorrect deck dimensions for what their plan actually had planned. So to try to explain the differences, I included a little chart on page 3 of the staff narrative that shows the original deck size, which is 10 by 8. And then last month, the Board of Adjustment approved a 25-foot by 8-inch by 10-foot 3-inch deck. And they had intended to request for a 38-foot long deck, 10 feet 3 inches deep. So this whole expansion from what was approved previously is going away from the setback issues that the variance is needed, which is why I view this amended request as non-problematic. We never received any concerns against this proposal, and we received one comment letter in support. And you'll find on page 17 of 66 of the packet in general is where they have an amended sketch that shows that expanded area away from Highway 61 for that expansion. I would also like to request that the Board of Adjustment has the ability to return them their application fee. This felt a little redundant. Unfortunately, I didn't have the administrative ability to make this decision on my own. So I would like to request that the Board of Adjustment consider returning them their application fee for the second variance application.
Thank you. And would the applicant care to speak?
Yeah, Robert Bush, my wife Rochelle back here. We were approved in April and everything was great until I went to go stake it out and I looked at my drawing and went, what happened was the drawing was going off the corner of the building instead of from the old existing deck that needs to be taken down. It's kind of a safety hazard. So all I'm trying to do is just get that, and I kind of broke my own rule of measuring twice and cutting once. So I'm here to try and get that additional 8 foot. And that's way off the lake. It's not, it's on the far end of the building, so. And I'm also wondering about it, you know, if you refund the variance fee or not, but.
Okay. Does anyone from the public wish to speak? We'll close the public comment. Does someone from the board wish to speak? Or make a motion?
I did the site visit last month. I just look at this, makes sense.
Okay, I need a motion.
I make a motion to accept the amended variance request and refund the second fee.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. You guys have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't ask for a third one, Bob.
My wife will kill me.
It was a little tense when they came in.
Okay, we'll go to Eve's Place Lakeside Cabin LLC. And Neva?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a variance request for relief from Croftville Road R1 property, RCR property, for a reduced side yard setback where a minimum of 50 feet is required. The applicant, Mona Salim, is requesting relief from the side yard setback requirement of the Resort Commercial Residential Zone District to relocate an existing shed on the property to place where an existing dilapidated shed is being removed. In this zoning district, it's a 50-foot side yard setback for resort commercial residential properties for the reasons of resort activities, trying to keep a buffer from neighboring properties. Currently, this property is used as Eve's Lakeside Cabins, and currently there are 5 sheds on the property. 4 are in good condition and 1 is in poor condition. The applicants are planning on building a new cabin on the property, which has been permitted with a land use permit that meets all the setbacks. However, this land use permit will require the relocating of one of the good quality sheds. So essentially they want to relocate a good quality shed where a bad quality shed is. On page 4 of the staff narrative, or page 26 of 66 of the packet, On the top photo, I put a little yellow box over the good quality shed that's proposed to be relocated where the red circle dilapidated shed is located. Also, what you don't see too well in that picture is that vegetated buffer between the red circle and the white house to the east is rock outcropping. So I think one benefit to this location is that it's not very visible to the neighbors. And then the sketch right below that is from the land use permit application that shows that new cabin proposal location. Let's see, I included some citations from the land use guide plan about commercial facilities meeting the needs of residents and visitors. This proposal will have no impact on the septic system, impervious surface coverage, wetlands, nor slope. I noted the bedrock outcropping in a photo. We did legally notice this. I did receive one comment letter in support or with no issue of the request from a neighbor. And I said in my recommendations for consideration that this request appears to be an efficient use of existing resources with minimal additional encroachment into the setback areas. The relocated shed would not encroach further than the current structure's placement to the side yard setback area. The increase in square footage would be approximately 32 square feet, is a little bit of a larger shed than the current red one. The proposal appears to be non-problematic, and I put 2 conditions for consideration. No component of the proposed construction may be closer than 19 feet from the side yard setback line, and development of the project shall be consistent with the design plans provided in the variance application.
Thank you. And do you wish to comment?
I think we met Paul and Brad earlier yesterday to look at the site. I think it's all pretty easy. I don't have any other further comments.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else wish to comment from the public? We'll close the public comment and we'll listen to the commissioners.
I went and did a site survey, went and looked up there. The shed had been temporarily moved over closer to where it was going to, where the end position would be, so it actually gave me a great visual of what it would look like in the end.
Mm-hmm.
I did also note the rock outcropping. The septic system's right in front of the proposed, already approved building and with the shed, so it's making the best use of the available space that's there. So it all made sense to me in terms of the
Okay.
conditions and their proposed plan.
All right. Charlie, do you have comment?
No issue at all.
Okay.
I did a site visit as well, and it just all appears reasonable, and
Okay.
Yeah, same experience. Spoke with the owners, did a site visit, and yeah, being able to see the shed right there, I think it's a great use of that space. And
am I correct? The red shed is going away, so there still will be 4?
Yep, so it'll be from 5, which is currently, and going to 4, since
Okay.
the red shed will be demolished.
Okay. And if we go through the checklist, it's consistent with the land use plan? Yes?
yes,
Is it proposed use of the property allowed in the land use district? Yes. The property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the zoning ordinance? Yes. Has the property owner established that the practical difficulty involved is due to circumstances unique to the property and not created by the owner? Yes.
Yep.
Will approving the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Yes.
Yes.
Has the property owner established that the practical difficulty involves more than economic consideration? Yes.
Yep.
yep.
Is there a motion to approve the variance?
Motion to approve with the 2 recommended conditions as written.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next request is Philip Larson, variance request. Okay, Neva?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The applicant, Philip Larson, is requesting relief from the 2 Island Lake shoreline and road setback requirements to place a 10 by 18 water-oriented accessory structure, a sauna, on the property at 157 The Grade. The structure would encroach 68 feet on the 100-foot lake setback requirement, which would place the structure 32 feet from the shoreline and 42 feet from the road center line. The proposed location would also place the structure within the shore impact zone. I included the ordinance citations there that explain the road setback requirements as well as the lake setback requirements. As a recreational development lake, it's a 100-foot setback, and from the public road, it's a 50-foot from center line or 35 feet from right-of-way, whichever is greater. And also the definition of shore impact zone, because that's a part of this conversation, is defined as the land located between the ordinary high water level, which is often referred to as the shoreline, of the public water, and a line parallel to it at a setback of 50% of the required structure setback. So with a 100-foot structure setback requirement, the shore impact zone of this lake is the first 50 feet from the lake. I also included some language about roads, driveways, and parking areas in shorelands with regard to the shoreland area, in case that comes up in our conversation. For background, county records show that the current owners purchased the property contract for deed in 2015 from Lawrence and Marshall Larson, who are still the primary owners. The applicant uses this property as their full-time year-round residence. The primary dwelling and supporting utilities and infrastructure are located on the north side of the grade and meet all setbacks. The proposed project location is situated between 2 Island Lake and the grade, where no conforming location exists to meet both lake and road setback requirements. The 100-foot lake setback occurs approximately at the north side of the grade right-of-way area. With regard to site conditions and considerations, Environmental Health has provided a memo which is enclosed to this packet. Some saunas do get connected into septic systems if they create gray water. Saunas can be a source of contaminants into surface water, which has been further explained into considerations I'll speak about in a minute. There's no issues with impervious surface coverage, and there are no wetland impacts as a result of this project as proposed. Drainage from this project site will flow downhill into 2 Island Lake, is sloped towards the lake, and then the road right-of-way is 33 feet on the south side of the grade and a 50-foot right-of-way on the north side of the road, which I included a survey from the Forest Service. The application was legally noticed in the Cook County News Herald on April 14th. 14 letters of notification were sent to adjacent property owners, as well as county departments, Cook County Coalition of Lake Association, and DNR hydrologist. No comments from adjacent property owners were received during the written comment period. The U.S. Forest Service did provide comments regarding the road and did indicate that planting vegetation within the road right-of-way would be problematic. Considerations: saunas are often categorized as a water-oriented accessory structure and are generally allowed per Minnesota shoreline rules. However, Cook County has adopted a more restrictive, protective shoreline zoning standard, which does not permit water-oriented accessory structures on inland lakes. Instead, on Cook County inland lakes, any structure designated as water-oriented must adhere to all setbacks or be accommodated through the variance process. Research on other sauna shoreline setback variance requests indicates that previous Board of Adjustments variance reviews did include significant efforts to have saunas meet the shore impact zone setbacks, which again is this 50% structure setback. When reviewing previous sauna variance requests, the Board of Adjustment has typically weighed the proximity and potential impacts to the shared resource, the lake. Saunas and other water-oriented accessory structures, which per the state standards are allowed at a much closer lake setback, can be an easy source of pollutants, especially when allowed as a permitted use on every property. Some counties don't identify saunas as water-oriented accessory structures, recognizing that they are a higher source of pollutants to the water body. Pollutants from saunas come in several sources, including soaps, distillates such as essential oils, and pathogens. Additionally, some saunas have gray water discharge, which should go into the septic system. I did include a list. As I was reviewing myself, I've only been at this county for about 1.5 years now, so I hadn't had really a sauna variance request, so I wanted to see what other Board of Adjustments have reviewed these as, and I know a few of you guys are newer Board of Adjustment members. So this list is it's not prescriptive or any type of precedent. It's just helpful to see how other sauna requests have been reviewed. Some have been denied, some have been partially approved. There's one case where a sauna was required to be relocated. There's one that was denied and it was after the fact and the sauna was made to get taken down. But I think one common theme between these is there is an effort to try to get the sauna as far away from the lake as reasonably possible. The applicant suggests in their application that this would be the best of the other options, which it could include placing the sauna on a parking pad trailer. It should be noted that the zoning ordinance requires all parking areas to meet shoreline structure setbacks, so constructing a parking area between the grade and Two Island Lake would not be feasible without a variance. The application also identifies other non-conforming structures on neighboring properties on Two Island Lake. The Cook County zoning ordinance does have criteria for the Board of Adjustment to evaluate shoreline setback variance requests relative to other nearby non-conforming structures under section 7.12, which is shoreline setback averaging. However, the criteria for calculating this relief specifically applies to principal structures and do not apply to accessory structures. The intent of the calculations for this standard purposely direct new structures to be set back further than the average of other nearby structures. Staff recommendation for consideration. Alternative options to consider could be considering an alternative location that allows a greater lake setback or allowing a smaller size sauna. The western side of the property shoreline has greater depth than the proposed sauna location in the center of the parcel at the narrowest stretch of the land. There may be a possible alternative for the sauna to be placed partially or entirely outside the shore impact zone in this area. This location would meet the landowner's desire to place the sauna on the lake side of the road and allow a greater structure setback to respect the shore impact zone. On site, staff measured 98 feet from the shoreline to the center of the grade. This on-site measurement correlates closely with the example in the photo on the bottom of page 6. This site could potentially place a structure up to the 33-foot road right-of-way, which would include the need for a variance for a 0-foot road right-of-way setback relief, or a 17-foot road centerline setback relief, and possibly meet or nearly meet the shore impact zone setback of 50 feet. There are large boulders in this area, so staff recommend if this area is considered that some flexibility in the exact location be given, with the variance stating that the structure may be no closer than 45 feet from the lake, for example. The review of a variance request should always be centered on the criteria for granting a variance. Neither landowner desires nor economic considerations alone constitute a practical difficulty. Please refer to page 8 for a list of the variance criteria for reviewing this request. If approved, the following conditions may be attached to this variance request. All permitting requirements of Cook County must be adhered to prior to the initiation of construction. Construction shall not deviate from plans submitted as a part of this variance request or an alternative with amending a specific location. No vegetation or excavation shall be permitted at the sauna site. Construction must occur atop existing vegetation and soil strata unless otherwise directed by land services. The gutter and drainage as described in the applicant shall be installed, and the sauna shall be dry with no pressurized water nor gray water discharge. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
State your name and...
I'm sorry?
Name and address, please.
Philip Larson. I live at 157 The Grade.
Oh.
This is my wife, Molly.
Molly Larson.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Maxwell, for preparing all this and working with us so far. And thank you guys for reviewing the long packet here that I contributed to and visiting the site. I think everything sounds good. I too, you're gonna want to protect the lake. It's important to us. We use it a lot. It's a cherished place, but we just really believe crossing the road a lot is problematic and to be avoided at as much cost as we can. So hence the back and forth that we've been doing so far with land services and sorting out what would be a good solution here. So I welcome compromises and alternatives. So I think these conditions here look pretty good. I guess my one concern is the alternative Ms. Maxwell prepared does have those large boulders. They're 2 feet. It's one of those areas in Cook County, if you guys are familiar with it, where it doesn't really have soil. It's just kind of bare and roots don't really grow in it. The trees blow over. It's kind of, so I guess I would propose to have another alternative that has, in an area that has, if you're not accepting the location that I'm at, that we're proposing to just keep those setback distances, but move it to a location with soil that has proper, better filtration, because I don't know where that bouldery area goes to. It's less suitable from an impact standpoint, and that, in my opinion, that way. And then also, I guess my alternative would be just to move back the location of our proposed site further from the lake. I have a little concern about putting it closer towards the right-of-way, because I don't know what the Forest Service would do. I guess I would just have to move the building, but I guess that would be my request, if I can make requests like that. I don't know.
Sure.
But I was gonna go somewhere else with that. Oh, just to concentrate our use in that one spot where we're already using the lake shore. We don't really go to the other parts, so I feel like that has some value in just letting it be, because it is a narrow strip of land. And
Okay.
I don't wanna spread out our use and foot traffic
All right.
and all that comes with that. But it wouldn't be gray water. I think that, I appreciate you bringing that up to me. I think that's important to not have a drain, and so I don't have any interest in that. What else? I think that was all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll close. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment? We'll close it to the public. And we'll open it to the Board of Adjustment.
Okay, I did a site survey.
Mhm.
Looked throughout the property here on Monday. The proposed alternate site, when I looked at that, my concerns were not only the rocks, but there were trees that were blown over. Additionally, there was standing water, so it's not draining away. The complexity of building on a spot like that and frost-heaves and the problems that'll occur in the future for anybody who would place something there is gonna compound our problems and probably result in what I'd see as greater risks, given that, they'd have to introduce drainage and bedding and footing and a lot of disturbance in order to make something be able to sit there and stand. I did take pictures of it if anybody on the board wants to see it. I did walk through the property line down past the fire pit, saw the docks and the canoes and so forth, so I kind of have a pretty good orientation of where it is. And the land has a, for lack of a better term, but it's sort of a plateau there in the middle, and then it starts to slope off towards the lake. And that, I guess that I would look to the Land Services Office in terms of the point that was brought up by the petitioner, was that what would the Forest Service view of being, as we looked at previously, where we were looking at a bluff condition last month and encroachment on the road right-of-way, it made a lot of sense where we were placing things. And that variance made a lot of sense in the protection of both the in this case Superior, in this case Two Island Lake, that the road right of way was more of the place to look for the latitude.
Right.
If we looked at saying, move it back so it stays up on the plateau, doesn't have the drainage, roof runoff, goes towards the roadside, not towards the lake. Seemed to be, with the land that was there, the soil, the drainage, which is even brought up by the petitioner, is makes sense, right, in terms of what I saw when I was on site. Anybody
Okay.
else?
Charlie, do you have comments?
Not at the moment.
Okay. And Linda?
I did do a site visit, and I don't have a comment at the moment.
Okay. And Paul?
I did a site visit as well and noticed a lot of the things that Brad did. That west site, is more concerning to me with the standing water, honestly. I mean, from a environmental standpoint as well. So, I mean, if you have anything coming off of that sauna, I mean, where you're talking about soaps and that sort of thing, I feel like putting that right in that standing water is more concerning to me. I do have one question just about water-oriented accessory structures. What else would that entail? Like a boathouse or like what else fits in that category?
If I may, Madam Chair?
Sure.
Quite often people will have like the life jacket paddle storage sort of facilities
Sure.
in what we think of as water-oriented accessory structures.
Sure.
Sometimes people have fish cleaning houses. So it can be a wide range.
Right.
On Lake Superior, boat houses, like actually for the boats and the fishing equipment, are allowed under certain permitting standards. So that's why I use the term inland lakes in my
Mhm.
staff narrative, you'll notice. So there is a distinguishing feature between the inland lakes and Lake Superior.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes they're gazebos. I've seen them as like just screen porch sitting areas. When I worked at Lake County, water-oriented accessory structures were allowed under more restrictive setbacks than the state standards, but they did not allow saunas as water-oriented accessory structures.
Okay.
If I may, Madam Chair, may I
Sure.
speak to the standing water thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I noticed that on my site visit too, and I'm really glad that you guys did site visits and pointed that out. I think this conversation is exactly how it's supposed to play out, is thinking about the physical property features. We're trying to think through the location, the best location for something like this. So I'm really grateful of your guys' thoughtfulness. Yeah, I noticed some standing water too that went up over my muck boot, and I just about swam in it. I didn't know I needed a life jacket for this site visit, Phil.
I don't go over there, but it's hazardous.
Yeah, so I acknowledge it is rocky and wet, and I didn't know how much that was like the frost thaw cycle that we're in the middle of, especially in that area. It's still winter in a couple of moments.
Some snow.
Yeah, but I agree. If this location is not a good suitable spot for the boulders, then let's make that a part of the record. This is exactly where I was hoping this conversation would end up going. So I
Okay.
appreciate this.
Good. I think the first thing that needs to be talked about is whether it stays on the north side of the road or we consider putting it on the south side of the road. And that's what we're doing here. And I think the planning or the Board of Adjustments concern is the shoreland impact zone. If we can maintain the 50 feet of natural vegetation without disturbing it and still put a sauna there. And on the request here, I looked, I believe it's 32 feet from the lake shore. And if it could be put back to beyond the 50 feet from the lake shore, that would make me much happier. And I know it's a small piece of property. And I'm more comfortable worrying about the lake shore than worrying about the road. So that would be what I would look to do, is to get it back out of the shore impact zone. I would have a problem allowing that. And then finding a place to put it. So that's where I would fall.
As a point, is it 100 feet in this zone though?
100?
So there's no buildable site south of the road, is that true?
The shore impact zone is
Right.
50% of the setback, and that is to be undisturbed.
Gotcha.
Okay.
May I, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, so the area that we're working with on the south side of the road is the Forest Service has that 33-foot easement. So
So you've got 98 feet from the,
Right now, they're 42 feet from the center of the road, so 33. So
Third,
there'd be,
yeah.
what, 9 more feet that they could work with?
so
That
32
to
plus
33.
9 is 41.
That was where I was going, is just back it up to that 33 feet off the center line, get as much space. I'm familiar with the site, but I didn't go there for this item, so I'm not sure the vegetation and how much would have to be removed to accommodate that extra 10 feet or so.
So instead of 30 or 32 feet from the ordinary high water mark, it would be 42 feet. 41.
41.
So are you talking about just taking it where the star is and just pushing it
back.
further into the right of way.
9
As far as
feet,
we
That
could.
put
makes-
them right up to the
That makes more
33
sense to me as
foot.
well.
Okay.
Especially
that
because
would
they
bring 'em-
use that area. They,
Right.
yeah, why move it?
There's also the flatter part of the land that they'd be on.
Okay. Do you have a suggestion, knowing the concern of the 50 feet of undisturbed lake shore?
Thanks for the opportunity to add more. I forgot to mention, I also don't know thoroughly all the conditions in Cook County, but I think this site is relatively unique in the strip of land being confined by a lake, a road. I'm sure there's lots of other confining features out there like bluffs and whatnot, but Gus Lake, Clearwater Lake, Two Island Lake on the grade. I'm not sure if there's any other lakes that have roads riding up on their short impact zone. but
Poplar Lake.
Poplar Lake
We
does.
we hear that a lot.
Well, it's busy. Okay, I guess Poplar's a good one because that one's a busy road, but the grade is probably in the top 2 busiest roads. Maybe it's a bad argument. Anyways, just saying, it's not the it's not that we could go further back and avoid something. I guess, if it were a quieter road like Gus Lake is on, whatever that road is, that's less of an issue. But anyways, I guess my proposed, to answer your question, I'm sorry, is, we have it skewed to the lake shore. If it's rotated, it achieves both 33 feet setback and around a 45-foot setback from the high water mark. So I guess I would propose that at that current location. So it would be 33 feet from the road and 45 from the water, and it would be parallel to the road rather than we had it rotated at an angle. So that minimizes the setbacks on both, infringement on the setbacks of both.
Yeah, we understand.
And that, I think, would be a much better
Yeah, that's
spot.
good.
I think that'd be really good, and that, as Phil's, I can speak to that. It's one of the busiest Forest Service roads, if not the busiest. That, I understand the reason to not want to be crossing that road.
Yeah.
You want to minimize that as much as you can, and so I think if we can go with those dimensions, I'm certainly comfortable with it.
Yeah, the other way would be to shrink the building, but if it's 10 feet wide, that's about the,
Yeah.
if you want to turn it the other direction so that it's parallel to the road, that would move it back.
And I do think this really does fit the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be an outlying structure. So.
All right, so somebody want to put together a motion? I would like to also add in one of the conditions that it not be used for sleeping quarters, not become a bunkhouse,
Sure.
and stay a sauna.
I do have one question in terms of, and it's the last condition on here, it being a dry sauna. I guess if, a future owner, are they held to that standard then? Because this variance is on the books, it says this sauna is a dry sauna. Boom, okay, good.
Yeah, not turning it into a wet sauna, but I am kind of, we've got the recommendation from the septic review. And it said, deadheaded into the ground or put it into the ground that was suitable filtration. And we kind of creating a condition that's, and I'm not advocating that we're changing it from dry to wet, but that we're creating conditions that, the county's own septic expert didn't advocate for, right? Is there a reason for us to be upping the ante beyond what that person said? Mitch?
May, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think maybe a better condition phrase instead of, or maybe just an addition. We could easily just have a condition that says, shall comply with Cook County septic ordinance per environmental health officer, or something to that extent. That if they go down this road and they have their sauna installed and they're like, oh, we need a drain to like rinse it out or something to allow water to drain out, that they're not maybe locked into this, and maybe they could consult with Mitch Everson, the expert on staff, about this. And our main concern is that they're just conforming to the septic ordinance
Yeah.
standards.
Oh, yeah, it's the best protection for the lake,
Yeah.
right?
So perhaps we could have some kind of, I think we typically have a boilerplate condition that's, you know, properties in compliance with Cook County septic
Mhm.
ordinance.
Okay, let's talk motion. And the plans have been submitted?
I think it's technically the 10 by 18 with, you know, we refer to what you have in the packet for what's being intended.
Okay. And so we would be changing the 45 feet shoreline setback relief?
Is number 2 essentially reading what we, already reading what we just came to on our setbacks?
So, it may be. I was kind of thinking that to allow flexibility administratively, so we don't get pigeonholed into something unnecessarily. Just saying shall be allowed a 0-foot setback from grade, and the lake setback should be like,
A minimum of,
yeah, something that gives us some flexibility to work with them when it comes to the actual land use permit side of it.
Would be going down to 42, give a
Yeah.
little flexibility there.
Yeah, I think we should check with the applicant to see if he feels pretty comfortable that spacing is there, because I didn't pull a tape with this in mind in that location.
okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Right.
42 from Lake, your feeling is pretty doable?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And 0 from the setback for the road.
So change number 5 to the boilerplate septic conforming. And Judy, you had suggested a 6.
Yeah, 6, not to be used for sleeping quarters.
If I may, on that condition number 5, I don't know if we need to change all of that language, because we don't want pressurized water nor gray water. That's going to become a more robust sort of use. I think Mitch Everson was proposing some, so like there could be a floor drain, but it doesn't require, like it would still be dry with no pressurized plumbing nor gray water. So I would just maybe propose adding and shall be in compliance with. So that way there might be some kind of drainage that's not, I don't know, I just don't want to.
I'm open to anything there, but I think compliance with 7080 actually covers all of that.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, sounds good.
Right.
I would motion to approve with those
6
6 conditions as we've.
as amended. Okay, so the motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay,
Thank you very much for your time.
thank you. All we need is an adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
Okay. We're done.
Next month Judy's going to be gone. Is anybody else planning on not making to next month's meeting?